Hello, Rank Squad. When you think about businesses that are selling through the roof, like Allo or Allbirds or Aviator Nation, sure, you think about a great product, a cool brand and brilliant marketing, but an often overlooked secret is actually the businesses behind the businesses, making selling and for shoppers buying simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. Nobody does selling better than Shopify, who are home of the number one checkout on the planet. And the not so secret with Shop Pay that boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning that there are way less carts going abandoned and way more sales going. So, if you're into growing your business, your commerce platform better be ready to sell wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling, on the web, in your store, in their feed, and everywhere in between. It's no secret, businesses that want to grow with Shopify. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout Allbirds uses. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/ranks, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/ranks to upgrade your selling today. That's shopify.com/ranks.
Last year, Americans ate 32 billion chicken wings. Who knows just how many helpless sides of celery were heartlessly thrown away? But this year, celery neglect can stop with you and irresistible Jif peanut butter. Because you can make a snack to make a difference. You can buy a jar of Jif to save the celery. So please, don't let celery be decoration for wings. Tap the banner to save the celery.
Hello, this is international football commentator Derek Ray, and you're listening to the Ranks FC podcast.
Hello, Rank Squad, and welcome to Ranks FC. I was going to say it's your favourite transatlantic football podcast, but actually that isn't quite true today, because actually Dean and I are both on one side of the Atlantic. Live from London, my name is Jack Collins, and I'll be your host today. And joining me from just a little bit further south is Mr. Dean Jones. How you doing, mate?
Yeah, I can almost see you from here, Jack. I can almost see you, not quite. But yeah, the sun's shining. It's beautiful around here, mate. Is it always like this?
With you.
Is it always like that?
Yeah.
Mate, the amount of people that have said that since I landed. You brought the weather with you. Imagine I was that powerful.
Yeah.
Imagine I could do that.
It'd be great. It'd be great. It'd be a lot easier. You wouldn't have had to move halfway across the world to get a bit of sun.
Right, I've packed everything. Oh, hang on, I've just forgot the sun. Let me just stick that in there. Then we're good to go. But yeah, it's funny how many people have said, "Oh, you brought the weather with you." At least 10, and I've only seen 12 people. So
well, that's good. There's another one for your list. I'm nothing if I don't speak in cliches.
Oh, it's fine, mate. Yeah, I mean, I would say there's nothing. It's the most obvious thing to say to us the second you see us. That's what I love about it.
I actually also might have done it. I brought it back from Malaga after a weekend in Spain.
True.
Actually, me, all powerful.
I think it was you.
Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. Anyway, it's a week until the Champions League Quarter Finals begin, which means that this is our last episode ahead of the Champions League Quarter Finals starting. And so we thought we'd talk about the Champions League. It is a Premier League match week. We are in the throes of it already. By the time you listen to this, a few games will have been played. So we thought we'd avoid most of those clubs as best as we can. But it feels like a day to talk about the Champions League. And I think we're going to talk about MVPs. I think we're going to talk about individual players who have been the stars or could be the star in these later stages for their respective clubs, the 8 teams left. And then maybe in the last part today, we'll rank them quickly in terms of maybe our top 3s across the board. But I thought we'd do this in a slightly more interesting way, Dean. You're going to talk about the main character, the big one, the big name in many cases from each of these teams, the star of the show so far. And I'm going to propose an alternate, and we can make a final decision on both of them for what we get for each club, and then we can potentially look at them in a certain ranking towards the end. But I'm excited to work through these clubs.
Yeah, so just to remind everybody, we have our quarterfinal draw all set. It is Arsenal versus Real Madrid, Bayern Munich versus Inter Milan, Barcelona versus Borussia Dortmund, and Paris Saint-Germain will play Aston Villa. And just to give you all an idea of where we sit right now in terms of the expectations for these teams, this is the general consensus among UK bookmakers, at least, of how the favourites pan out at this stage. So the favourites, somewhat surprisingly, actually, for me, is PSG. They're the favourites to win the Champions League at this point. Second, Barcelona. Third, Real Madrid. Fourth, Bayern Munich. Then comes Arsenal, Inter Milan, and then the two outsiders, Aston Villa and Borussia Dortmund. So that's how the experts, per se, would see this playing out. Never goes that way.
You know when they weren't favourites? They weren't favourites when I got them at 25-1 or plus 2,500 just before their game against Manchester City when they were on the verge of going out.
Wow, yeah, that's high odds. I mean, yeah, the two outsiders here, Villa are 40-1 and Dortmund are 50-1, but everyone else is under 11-1. So that goes to show what great value you've got there. PSG currently coming in at 17-5, as we would say in the UK.
Might cash out.
Yeah, I mean, you might want to look at that. But we'll see, because in this show, we are going to be discussing the players that might make the difference over the two legs of these quarterfinals and, yeah, what their influence has been and what it should be, what it can be. So should we get cracking with the first day of games? And I'll start
us off,
with Arsenal against Real Madrid, which, being in England right now for me, and I will still be in England when this game is played, so I'm excited about that, is the big draw right now. Arsenal playing Real Madrid. So a really interesting tie. I'm really excited about the prospects of this one, and obviously we're sat here recording this on Tuesday before Arsenal have played their match against Fulham, but there's already talk leading into that fixture about the return of Bukayo Saka. So let's see how that one comes out in the wash. But just to kind of set the scene here, that we haven't seen whether or not or how much Saka was to feature in that game. But the plan has been that Saka would be building himself back towards being available for the Real Madrid fixture. He's been back in full training for a week, has played a behind closed doors friendly, which is a very old school thing that used to happen all the time. Don't hear about it so much anymore, but apparently he has played one. So that's a big thing to consider right now from an Arsenal perspective. So yeah, Arsenal-Real Madrid is where we begin this discussion, mate. And I'll start with my Arsenal MVP. And I'm not going to go for Saka, actually. I'm going to go for Odegaard. I don't know if that throws you or something, or if that actually spoils your plan. But I think Odegaard has been a good version of himself. I don't think he's been his best version of himself. And I think he needs to be, because he needs to be Arsenal's most valuable player as we get to this stage. Because he is still the kind of creative heartbeat of this midfield, and also as the guy, obviously, that gets their attacks going. He orchestrates it, not just with his passing, but with the vision that kind of sets Arsenal on their way and the things that he can see. Having Saka back will bring a new dimension to Odegaard's play too. We've had spells without both of these players this season, and we've learned that we get neither player at their best when the other is missing. They are just on the same wavelength. They know how to team up together. And so with the potential of Saka returning, I see the bar for Odegaard being even higher and that we get a better performance level out of him. In the last round against PSV, I think we saw a better Odegaard. I think we talked about it in our episode on the back of that was great from Odegaard. I'm really happy to see him playing at this level, completely controlling the game, scoring goals. This is what we want to see from him more, that makes him so indispensable to a good Arsenal team. Unlock defences, but also be the difference maker in the big games. That's what we need to see again. So yeah, my MVP for Arsenal is Martin Odegaard.
Yeah, I mean, I like it. And I think that actually seeing him with Saka on that side again is going to be quite something and potentially quite special as Arsenal come back into themselves. And look, one of the things that has been levelled at them in Saka's absence, but also in the absence of obviously Kai Havertz and Gabriel Martinelli for a long time, was the fact that they weren't able to score enough goals from open play. And as they come back into this part of the season with the league looking almost out of reach at this point. Obviously, we haven't seen them play Fulham tonight, and we'll see what happens with Liverpool in the derby against Everton as well. But it feels like this is now all eggs in the basket. Make sure you finish second and you end up, qualifying for the Champions League comfortably and make sure you don't sort of slip to third in a 2-horse race. You do not want that tag. But it is all on the Champions League. And look, whilst this Real Madrid side are good and whilst they are able to turn it on in Champions League football, and we've seen that over so many years, I think Arsenal will look at them and say this is not an invincible side. I think they will look at the problems that Leganés gave them at the weekend and think, okay, if Leganés can give them those kind of problems, then we should be able to push forward as well. And I think that, as you say, Saka's influence coming back should open the game up for Martin Ødegaard to play a major role. So when you kind of come to that, it's then the narrative of Ødegaard against Real Madrid, where obviously he moved very, very young, but didn't really get the opportunity to show his true colours. He will have a point to prove to this side that he was a player that they should not have let go.
Yeah.
And if Arsenal are going to find their way into the deeper reaches of this competition, to the semi-finals, potentially the final, then he needs to find that best version of himself in order to pull strings and control these games. And whilst I think the influence of Bukayo Saka will be massive in terms of allowing him to do that, I think that if Saka has 2 unbelievable games against Real Madrid and Ødegaard doesn't show up or doesn't play to his full potential, Arsenal don't win these games. If Ødegaard does and plays alongside Saka and steps up, then he could be the difference maker. And that's why I quite like that you've gone for him as opposed to Saka for yours. My flip side of this is that I actually think that if Arsenal are going to win this, they're going to do it by eking it out. And thus, I would potentially turn my attention as an alternate to William Saliba, who has obviously been huge for this Arsenal.
Who Real Madrid also would like to sign now.
Real Madrid would like to sign. That is also true. But I think you're kind of looking at it and you look at the way that Arsenal started the group stages, right? He played 90 minutes. They kept a clean sheet against Atalanta, who were flying at that time. They kept a clean sheet in a 2-0 win against PSG, who were very not. Who kept a clean sheet against Shakhtar. They conceded a single goal against Inter. And then in his last 2 games of the group stages, they win 5-1 against Sporting away, where I thought he did an absolutely wonderful job in making it work. And then he also keeps a clean sheet against Monaco. Now, he misses the win against Dinamo Zagreb, which is the second last game of the group stage. And he misses the 2-1 win, or he's on the bench for the 2-1 win over Girona, where things were pretty much done and dusted anyway. He plays in the game against PSV Eindhoven, where, yes, they concede, but ultimately go on to absolutely rattle them. And then he's given a rest whilst they draw 2-2 against PSV in the second leg. Well, you can start to spot the common theme here, right? When William Saliba plays, Arsenal concede fewer goals. And I think his influence on this game is, his battle now against countryman Kylian Mbappe is going to be absolutely crucial to the way this game works. Because if Real Madrid start to get in and behind this Arsenal team, then they're going to run away with this. And I thought that one of the things that we've seen teams do quite well against Real Madrid at certain periods this season was frustrate them by catching players offside over and over and over again, right? You go back to that Barcelona high line, but you go back to other games that we've seen Real Madrid struggle in, and that frustration that builds within this, that's the kind of difference maker that I think a centre-back can be in a game like this, and especially a centre-back who has the physical tools available to him that a William Saliba does. Now, obviously, him and Gabriel come as a kind of pair. They come as a partnership. You look at them and you think, okay, this is where you either stop the Real Madrid attack or they run riot. But I do think that Saliba and that ability to get in behind the pace that he has in terms of recovery is going to be crucial in that battle with Mbappe. And I imagine he's going to be the one that steps up whilst Gabriel potentially has that little scrap with Jude Bellingham as he starts to become the kind of 10 and push forward. So that battle for me is hugely crucial here. But I think I would go one further and say that whilst obviously there have been star performers in various aspects of this Arsenal team over the course of the last few seasons, if they are going to go and win the Champions League, if they are going to go and reach the final of the Champions League, it's going to come off the baseline of an incredibly solid defensive unit. And I think that Saliba remains, for me, the heart of that defensive unit. And that's why I'd put him into this conversation as potentially Arsenal's MVP. Maybe not for the tournament that we've seen so far, although I think you can make that argument, but actually in terms of who's going to need to be their star man going forward if they're going to have a serious and realistic shot of winning this competition.
Yeah, I mean, when we talk about Real Madrid, what is the major strength? Obviously, it's that attack, which is awesome and on its day, unstoppable. So you've got to have a force back there that is capable of building a wall, of being able to compete in terms of pace, in terms of physicality, but also in terms of the mental side of this game, to stay switched on for however many minutes this tie ends up running into. So I think that's actually a really good point, because what Arsenal are going to have to understand here is that it's all about withstanding long periods of pressure, but also counter-attacking play, right? And you're right, like with Saliba, and this is probably a reason that Real Madrid won him, they'll be giving themselves times, Arsenal, where they start to dominate the ball, right? We've seen that can happen against Real Madrid, and they'll have them to sit in for a minute. And they're happy to do that because they know they have that explosivity to just burst out.
Allowing the game to stretch a little bit in order to, I completely agree.
Yeah. And when Saliba's been absent, there's always been that creaky back door for Arsenal that can potentially be attacked. Real Madrid, I guess this is one way to determine this, actually. If Real Madrid were to pick a player to be missing, who would they rather was missing? Odegaard or Saliba?
Saliba.
Yeah,
100%.
I think you're right. Yeah, I think you're right. 100%. I think you've nailed that one. Yeah, I've made an argument against myself there, but I've backed myself into a corner, and I think that it's because you're right.
I think you could also probably make an argument for Declan Rice in here in terms of what he's going to have to do from a defensive perspective in terms of shielding that back four. But I think that if you were to offer this to Carlo Ancelotti, he would probably say, I'd have Saliba gone. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. And look, as part of this, in terms of that mentality that I'm talking about, like no red cards. You've got a lot of pace to deal with here, a lot of fine movements in and around that penalty box, in and around being the last man. Saliba, do not get caught out, son, or you're in big trouble.
Absolutely. All right, should we flip it and look at the Real Madrid of it?
Yeah, let's do it. I'm going with Vinny from my side of things, and got a little bit of a point to prove at the moment, Vinicius Jr. Not having his most dynamic season, but he is one of the most dynamic and dangerous footballers in world football. Speed, dribbling, clinical finishing, whatever you want to ask for, this guy's got it, particularly when it comes to the tail end of a campaign when moments matter. Vinny's usually been your guy. Now, this season has been a little bit of a different story, a little bit more doubt raised as to whether Vinny is coming into this type of form when it truly matters. But the overall stats for Vinny this season haven't actually been quite as bad as I think some people have started to try and make out. This season, his overall stats are 40 games played, 18 goals scored, and 11 assists. And coming into this, I thought, I wonder how that actually just compares generally to where he was last season. I wonder what his overall stats were across competitions. And interestingly, he played 40 games last season and he got 11 assists last season, but he got 25 goals. So he's 7 goals short at the moment of the kind of form we would expect of Vinny Jr. Last season, 10 games, 6 goals, 5 assists in the Champions League. This season, 10 games, 7 goals in the Champions League, 2 assists. But this is when you really want to see it because when you think of Vinny, you're thinking of turning up in the big moments. Last season, Real Madrid played Bayern Munich, semi-finals. They drew 2-2 in the first leg. Vinny gets both the goals. They play the final against Borussia Dortmund. Vinny gets one of the goals. And so now you want to kind of see him produced that kind of form. Since we got out of the group stages, we haven't seen that from Vinicius Jr. They've played 2 legs against Manchester City. He got 1 assist across the 2 games, a 3-2 and a 3-1 with the 2 scorelines from that. And then obviously in the Atleti game, which was decided on penalties, and Vinny didn't get any goal contributions. So where does he stand here? Like, this is a guy that's...
penalty, didn't he? It was the...
Yeah, he missed a penalty, even worse.
Tough day at the office as well.
It was a tough day, yeah, exactly, yeah. So it's actually even worse than I was even setting it out to be. But a guy that should be in that conversation for the Ballon d'Or if Real Madrid go on to win it. A guy, as I say, that is having questions asked of him at the moment in terms of lifting his levels, but also maintaining levels at this point. But he's a decisive player, and I've always say, we'll just wait until March, April, May, because that's when you judge Vinicius Jr. You don't judge him in October, November when it doesn't matter. This is when you judge him. And so for me, I think that's what makes him the most valuable player. And obviously, when we're talking about most valuable players too, let's remember that Real Madrid have probably the 3 most valuable players in the actual tournament in him, and Mbappe and Bellingham. They're probably your 3 leading contenders if you're looking for the most financially valuable players. So in every but in every sense, like, he's got an argument here to be the most valuable player left in the Champions League. So let's see it. I'm turn up.
Yeah, I mean, this is it. And the question marks are always going to be there, considering what happened in the second leg against Atleti, because he wasn't able to raise his game. He wasn't able to get the better of them. And actually, what we saw from a kind of how Atleti handled him perspective, it mattered so much so that he was taken off before the end of the game, which is something you never see really from a Vinicius Jr. in a big Champions League game, right? Like, him being substituted even late on before a penalty shootout is kind of like a, whoa, okay.
Yeah,
wild.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, that is not something we've come to expect. So at that point, you're like, okay, you now have a point to prove. I think you're right. He probably is the most financially valuable player in the tournament, maybe Mbappe, but probably Vinicius. So, I want to see that delivered. And actually, when you're looking at where Arsenal exceed, where their strengths have been, a lot of it has been on that right-hand side. Saka coming back and helping with the defensive aspects of things, whether that's Ben White or Yuri Timber, it doesn't really matter. Like, that's been something that Arsenal have been able to lean into. And obviously then Saliba plays on that side of the defense as well and is able to come in and help, and Declan Rice dropping into roles as well. So there's a lot of work to get through from whoever your left winger is, if they're going to be the difference maker. But these are the games where he stepped up last year. These are the games that had him in that Ballon d'Or conversation. These are the games that made him feel like he deserved the Ballon d'Or, which again was a perfectly reasonable argument at the time. So you kind of look at it and go, well, you've got to go and do that again now. You've got to go and make that happen. And this is an opportunity to do that. My flip would be, again, maybe your question from the first point, who would Arsenal take out if they could take anyone out? It probably would be Vinicius. The ability to make something happen out of nothing, right? Like, I think you would look at and think reasonable. But if I was Arsenal, I'd be like, you take out Fede Valverde. Because it doesn't matter where he plays. It doesn't matter if he plays on the right-hand side of the attack. It doesn't matter if he plays in centre midfield as an 8. It doesn't matter if he plays as the 6 at the base of the midfield. It doesn't matter if he plays at right back. You know that you are going to get a minimum 8 out of 10 performance from Fede Valverde. I think he will be wearing the captain's armband when this game kicks off, the first leg of this game. I think he will be playing right back because they will look to him to step up in that role again in the same way that he was able to nullify a variety of different options in that Atleti team. I just think that his versatility has been so impressive in this team. The fact that he does not shirk duties ever in this team. For me, he is one of the most complete players in world football. And I think that the fact he has been able to have the influence that he has had from the variety of positions that he has had, the fact that Carlo trusts him completely and implicitly in almost every scenario, the fact that often, in different elements of games, they'll be like, right, we'll stick on a different right back to push you forward and try and change the game in our favor. The fact that he is constantly running, that he can do 120 minutes and be that impactful for the entire time. I just think that he is truly wonderful. And for me, he has been Real Madrid's best player over the course of this season, from start to finish. And no matter what, where he's set up to play in a pitch, he is going to have an impact. For me, I feel that puts him at the top of this conversation every single time.
Yeah, I mean, it's that blend of attributes that he's got, in terms of versatility, definitely. But he works ridiculously hard, which is not what Arsenal want from Real Madrid. They don't want players that are also going to work hard. They're all talented enough. You want them to at least.
Yeah, the reason that you get a point, you get something out of this Real Madrid side is because there are certain elements of it that defensively don't necessarily do the same amount of work as others. If you have Valverde in there doing the work of three men, you can potentially cover that, right? And that's what he brings to the table. He sets up the platform for everybody else.
Exactly. And they're like, where are you playing today? It's like, I'm playing DM, right wing and right back. Okay, cool. You crack on, mate. Good luck with it. And they're like, he'll do it all. He'll do it all absolutely fine on the same day. It's kind of like when you're in the playground. It's like, where are you playing, mate? I'm just going to play all around here. It's like, are you looking to be a defensive player or attacking? I'm going to do both. Don't worry. I'll just figure it out as I go on. I'll see how the game starts to open up. So I think it's a good shout. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a difference really actually there in the conversation in terms of who the fans would like to be missing and who the actual players on the pitch would like to be missing. I think as a fan, if you were to ask Arsenal fans, who would you like to be missing from this game, Vinny or Valverde? Like the majority are going to say Vinny. But when you bring it down to an intrinsic player level, maybe you got a point. Maybe they would like to see Valverde miss him.
I don't know, but it's definitely the player I would pick. If I was Mikel Arteta for the day and I was allowed to choose an opponent's player to not be part of this team, I would be picking Valverde, because also I think that gives you an option to actually go and really attack Lucas Vazquez at right back. And if you can do that, then perhaps you can get some joy down that side, especially with no natural right-hand side defender aside from Asensio, who is excellent and really has made his mark this season. But I wonder if they go with Rudiger and David Alaba here, just to kind of give themselves the experience in the middle of the park. And that potentially opens up a route to goal if you don't have a right back who's fully on it. If you have Valverde there, that route gets closed quite quickly.
Yeah. But Vinicius Jr. is amazing, and I still think I'm right. Like, I can just see him cutting up Arsenal time and time again if he's on it here. So
I'll give you that one.
That star power just surely has to edge it.
You can stick with Vinny here.
Yeah, let's move on to the next game, which is going to be happening also on Tuesday. It's Bayern Munich against Inter Milan. Obviously, I've expected big things from Bayern this season in the Champions League, when perhaps you didn't so much. But my MVP just has to be Harry Kane across this tie, but across any game that Bayern Munich were going to play of any significance, to be honest with you. Harry Kane, who famously can't win trophies, is going to win trophies this season. He's going to have a Bundesliga to his name, surely. And he might yet have a Champions League to his name. He's making a good go of it this season for Bayern Munich. Overall, he's played 38 games. He's got 33 goals. He's got 12 assists. He's banging them in left, right, and centre. Went through a little spell recently of not doing so. He went through, by his standards, a little bit of a drought. 3 of the games in a 5-match spell were starts, but he also had 2 sub-appearances without scoring a goal in the Bundesliga, which was somewhat surprising. Did score against St. Pauli at the weekend. But in the Champions League, last time out, in the last 16, he was able to see off Bayer Leverkusen with 2 goals in the first game and then 1 in the second leg as well. So, yeah, it's some nice stuff from Harry Kane, as you would expect. A guy who doesn't care whether you're sticking it on his head, whether he's tapping it in at the far post, whether he's smashing it in from just outside the box, whether it's a free kick, whether it's a penalty. Harry Kane is a man for any occasion. And it was interesting today, like he was asked about a transfer and back to England, because for some reason that debate started to come back around. And
I think people are going really, really hard on the whole, like, oh, he really wants to break the Premier League goals record. And I think he probably I would quite like to do that, but it's probably not the be all and end all for my career. I'm sure, I think people make a lot of this, and I'm not completely convinced that it's the absolute golden goose that people are discussing it as.
No, I agree. But obviously with Kane, so it's not just like, it is mainly the goal scoring, but we know that he loves to drop deep too and link play. And that will be very important against an Inter Milan team that are going to be really difficult to beat. But of course, what do Inter build themselves onto? A really tough defence. So how many chances will you get to score? How many goals are going to separate these two teams? Probably not a lot is going to separate these two teams. What's going to be key is that Harry Kane makes the most of those moments when they come along. It's that Bayern Munich make the most of those moments when they come along. And there's only one man that you want on the end of as many chances as possible that are created over those two games. And that's why Harry Kane, for me, has to be their most valuable player.
Yeah, I mean, I actually agree with you. So it's hard to make alternate cases. I think you could probably make one for Michael Elise.
I thought you were going to say Musiala first, but okay.
Well, Elise or Musiala, because actually it is one thing, as you say, Harry Kane being on the end of those chances, but they've got to be created, and you've got to get through an incredibly difficult rear guard in order to create chances. Musiala being able to sort of carry the ball through multiple defenders, I think is a major, major thing. But also I would point out Elise's ability from free kicks, from corners, his set piece specialty, and that dead ball ability is something that I think could end up deciding this game, because Inter are incredibly hard to break down. And now that they have returned to some sort of form of having wing backs again, with DiMarco back in business, with Darmian back in business, with Dumfries looking like he's just coming back to feel like he can make a difference again, I think there's probably something in that. But equally, I think you could probably make a case that how do Bayern actually survive in this game? Well, they try and win the midfield battle. And we know how good this Inter midfield are. We've talked at length over the likes of Barella and Çalhanoğlu and Mkhitaryan, and even the fact that Fratesi and Zielinski have all stepped up. I know Zielinski currently holding an injury, but he may be back for the second leg of this one. Like, where are Bayern going to have their work cut out for them? We're in central midfield, and whilst Leon Goretzka's sort of renaissance has gone under the radar a little bit, and I think should be discussed, is Kimmich on the back of a new contract, playing like he's on the back of a new contract and feeling like he's the main man in this side again. I think that makes a major, major difference. And so I think you could make cases for all of that. You can make a case for Kimmich. I think you can make a case for Elise and that dead ball ability. I think you can make a case for Musiala having to sort of go through a couple of defenders in order to open up those opportunities. But ultimately, as you say, they do have to be taken. And I think it's quite difficult to look past Harry Kane.
Yeah, I think that was probably always going to be the case, that it was likely to settle on Kane from a Bayern Munich perspective. But if we flip it, then Inter Milan, it's probably a little bit more complicated to decide exactly who is their most valuable player, because they are a team that is built differently. I'm still going to go with that goal scoring star power as being their most valuable asset. And that's why I am skewed towards picking Lautaro Martinez. He is the talisman of this team. He is the guy that, when you're looking for a moment, when you're looking for a tight game to be decided, he's got that knack of making big moments count. And I think when you consider where he is at this stage of his career, I think he's not silently, but quietly going well about his work still. He's only 27, Lautaro Martinez. It feels like he should be in his 30s by now. But this season, 9 Champions League games, 6 goals, 1 assist. But I think more importantly is when you look at like how decisive the goals have been. In the group stage, Sparta Prague, like his last 3 games that he's played in the Champions League, the group stage game against Sparta Prague, 1-0 win, Lautaro Martinez scores the goal. A 3-0 win over Monaco, Lautaro Martinez scores all 3 goals. Feyenoord, which was a big game in that first leg, a 2-0 win, Lautaro Martinez gets one of the goals. He's the captain of the team. And yeah, I think when you consider the way that Inter Milan play too, and the way that he has to work in tight spaces a lot of the time and make very quick, smart decisions, usually nails it. You're not usually getting a below par performance from Lautaro Martinez. And the one thing that you or anyone else that wants to doubt Bayern's credentials to go on and win the Champions League would be is that the defence isn't always that good. And if there's any chance that Bayern switch off or are caught napping, this guy will make you pay. Like every day of the week, this guy makes you pay.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with a lot of this, but I do think that the basis of where this Inter team have been so brilliant is defensively, right? They've conceded twice in the Champions League. One of them was obviously in the second leg against Feyenoord when they were already winning 2-0 from the first leg. And the second one was a last-minute goal from Bayer Leverkusen. So they were behind in the Champions League for all of about 400 seconds over the course of the tournament so far, which is why I think that they're weirdly disrespected in terms of the odds, but also in terms of where people put them. I think this Inter side are defensively good enough to go and win this tournament. And actually, we talk about this defenses win titles thing. I think that ultimately, if you're looking at these two teams and thinking, well, where's the difference? The difference is in this Inter defense and what they can do. And I think the answer is Jan Sommer. I think that what we've seen from Jan Sommer since he obviously moved from Bayern, after spending that year there where he basically stood in for Manuel Neuer. And I didn't think it didn't all go to plan, but I thought he did a pretty decent job, to then becoming the key man for this Inter side between the sticks, the man who replaced Andre Onana, who stepped up and took them to another level. And what we've seen from them over the course of these 2 years is a team that, yes, is more than the sum of its parts. And I think that that's why Inter are perhaps the most difficult to pick one for out of all of these teams. They feel like Inzaghi has put together this very, very cohesive unit that rotates regularly, that players come in and out, and has done all season long, right? Like, this is not new. It's not fresh. He's been moving around the pieces at his disposal all year long. And yet, the one constant, as far as he's not been injured, has been Jan Sommer. I think he is one of the best shot stoppers in world football. I think that up there in terms of form, he is one of the best goalkeepers in the world right now. And I think that when it comes to this game, the difference might well be who's in goal for both teams, because we know Manuel Neuer obviously out for the foreseeable future, and Jan Sommer has returned to this Inter team. The difference, therefore, between who's in net for these two teams, I think could end up being the thing that decides this tie. And I think that Jan Sommer goes overlooked often about exactly how good he is, how much confidence he gives to this defense, how crucial he has been to the way that they've set up as perhaps the world's preeminent defensive team. He, for me, is the man that makes it all work, puts it all together. His experience, his nous, his cohesion with his back line. All of it is so crucial to the way that Inter operate. And I think that he could end up being the difference. If they go on and win this tournament, it's going to be off the back of clean sheets. It's going to be off the back of conceding very, very few goals. And ultimately, I think that will come down to how Jan Sommer performs.
I mean, what a signing. What a signing he proved to be. Came from Bayern for less than 7 million euros, I think it was.
Yeah.
But when you're looking at value, I mean, that is the most valuable player you'll see in the Champions League, because that is an absolute bargain. That's proper value. And you're right. Obviously, Inter Milan is it's defense that a lot of people talk about, but it's also leadership and it's also trust. And that's what Sommer gives that team. And it's what a lot of teams in the competition and also in the leading leagues across Europe are kind of craving. It's a goalkeeper that they just don't have to worry about. It's one of the things, actually, I was speaking to somebody the other day about Man United and Onana and whether he stays or goes. Obviously, he was the Inter Milan goalkeeper previously. And they were like, Amorim just wants a goalkeeper he doesn't have to worry about. He just doesn't want to have to think about that right now. Just have a goalkeeper that is very dependable, makes right decisions and saves shots. Inter Milan have got him. The Inter Milan have got someone they can trust in that respect. So I take your point. Yeah, I don't know. It depends. The listeners can make up their mind as to which way they think is most important. But obviously the two ends of the pitch are crucial.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like keeping an eye on the Neuer injury has been a real interesting one, because I do think that could be the swing state for this, like in terms of how this game goes. He was expected to be back after the international break after, I think it's a calf injury he's currently suffering from. And there was a setback in that. He's done a running session. A lot of the Bayern Munich fans are saying, a small hope he could be back for the Inter game. I don't see it. So we will see. But for me, Jan Sommer, very much the heart of this unit for Inter, and that's what matters. Right, we're going to take a quick break there. When we come back, we'll be looking at the other 4 teams left in the competition. Make sure you stick with us. Hello, Rag Squad. When you think about businesses that are selling through the roof, like Allo or Allbirds or Aviator Nation, sure, you think about a great product, a cool brand and brilliant marketing, but an often overlooked secret is actually the businesses behind the businesses, making selling, and for shoppers, buying, simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. Nobody does selling better than Shopify, who are home of the #1 checkout on the planet. And the not-so-secret with Shop Pay that boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning that there are way less carts going abandoned and way more sales going. So, if you're into growing your business, your commerce platform better be ready to sell wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling, on the web, in your store, in their feed, and everywhere in between. It's no secret, businesses that want to grow with Shopify. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout Allbirds uses. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/ranks, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/ranks to upgrade your selling today. That's shopify.com/ranks. Welcome back to Ranks FC, where we're looking at MVPs for each of the sides left in the Champions League. Dean, where are we going next?
Right, Wednesday, 9th of April, Barcelona play against Borussia Dortmund. An interesting one, this. I mean, I think most people are just expecting a shoe-in here that Barca go on and win the game. Obviously, Dortmund saw off Lille in the last round to get to this point. And Barcelona had a nice couple of results recently, they feel like they are in good shape after dispatching of Benfica in the last round. So, who is the most valuable player for each side when we get to this tie next week? So before this point, by the way, Barcelona still have 2 games to play. They've got Atletico Madrid and then they've got Real Betis. So this is quite tough, but...
Tricky couple of games, this.
Yeah, but I'm not going to complicate matters here. I'm just going to pick Rafinha because I didn't see it coming. I didn't see Rafinha becoming Barca's most valuable player. And even when I was kind of drawing all of this up, I just thought I'd say Lamine Yamal because he still feels like that should be the right answer. But then I looked at it and I was like, hang on, so we're talking about this Champions League game. Who's been so impactful? Who's been decisive? Who's been reliable? All these different factors you're looking at. Rafinha's record in the Champions League this season has just been superb. He's played 10 games in the Champions League. He's scored 11 goals. He's got 5 assists. Over the course of this season, he's got 27 goals, 20 assists. But in the Champions League, across those 10 games, all of which he started, there's only been 3 games he hasn't actually returned in. And when he has returned, he's got a hat-trick against Bayern Munich. In the last 16 games against Benfica, Barcelona scored 4 goals. They won 1-0 and then they won 3-1. He got 3 goals and he got an assist. This guy is a serious difference maker. When they played Benfica in the group stages, that crazy game when they won 5-4, scored 2 goals in that one. Sometimes this season he gets the armband. This guy is his stature growth has been absolutely staggering. 28 years old, what a time to kind of peak. And as I say, I was considering Lamine Yamal, who's 17, but Rafinha, in the back of a year a summer when it looked like he would have been leaving Barcelona, has grabbed hold of this dream move and found himself as kind of irreplaceable. On our Patreon, we talked about on Tuesday how Barca's spending and how they could kind of go and buy players in the summer. It's kind of like for like. If you've got to spend 50 million, you've got to get rid of 50 million pounds of talent. If you want to bring in 100 million signing, you need to sell someone for 100 million. I was like, so the only way they can really go and buy someone really significant is to sell someone like Rafinha, and feels like he's going to be hard to replace in this sort of form. So I think this is where I have to sit with it right now. He's just been such an important player. When you look at Barca's, he hasn't actually featured in Barca's last couple of games.
No, got back late from international duty. They didn't need him.
Yeah, so he's even had a rest. I think if I was Dortmund, I'll be worried about this.
If I was Dortmund, I'd be worried about a lot of players in this Barcelona team. But I am going to give you an alternate, and actually I'm going to quote Rafinha.
Oh.
He says this. He says, Pedri doesn't have many assists. He doesn't have a lot of goals. But for me, he's the most important player on our team. I think Pedri is Barcelona's heart. Here's some stats for you, Dean. No central midfielder has won possession more times or created more chances from open play than Pedri in Europe's top 5 leagues this season. Pedri has won possession in the midfield third more times than any other player in Europe's top 5 leagues this season. He's completed the most passes in the opposition half in La Liga and the most completed passes in the final third of the pitch in La Liga this season. This is an all-timer of a season from Pedri. And when you watch Barcelona, my eye is continually drawn to the way that he plays. Now, I think one of the really interesting things about this Barcelona side is obviously the defensive line plays so high up, but also the on-ball ability of Pau Cubarsí and Inigo Martinez means that the midfield is much higher. So therefore, Pedri isn't doing the whole deep lying playmaker thing quite as much anymore this year. What he is doing is basically been an all-action player, and he's taken on a bit of the Gavi mantle at the same time as doing everything else that he was doing before. Now, obviously, we saw him have that wonderful breakout season and him then feel very, very tired for a little while. But this has been Pedri back to his absolute best over the course of this season. And the way that he dictates the play, the way that he dictates the tempo of games, the way that everything runs through him, I think is probably the most important asset on this Barcelona team. And if you were to remove him, yes, there are other players that can step in and do a job, but I think no one is doing it to the same extent. No one is putting together the same consistency of performance in terms of not just his metronomic ability to keep the ball within a team, but also doing the hard yards, winning the ball back, that kind of extra string to his bow that feels like it's been added here in terms of Hansi Flick has gone, look, you're going to have to do a little bit more off the ball if you want to be the main man in my team. And he's gone, all right, fine. And just started doing it. And I think that when you look at the way that this entire team operates and the way that Barcelona have changed into a slightly more a dynamic team in terms of transition, but also a little bit more of a direct team. That's something different for Pedri, right? We always knew that he had the ability to play a killer pass, but his ability now to lift the ball into areas where Rafinha and Lamine Yamal are getting into one-on-one situations with their defenders is a crucial part of how they have become quicker, more fun to watch, but also more dynamic in the final third. Gone are the kind of knocking the ball around the midfield days of where things went side to side until the perfect goal was created. It's made Barcelona far more of a threat, I think, in the final third. It's meant that they were able to change up their gameplay style at different elements. And for me, everything goes through Pedri. And the heart of everything good in this Barcelona team, it is Pedri. So whilst I have so much love for what Rafinha has done in this comeback season, and whilst I have an incredible amount of love for seeing Lamine Yamal absolutely toy with defenses, I think if you were to pull out a player of this Barcelona team and go, they're going to be much worse if you take them out, the answer for me is Pedri.
Well, we know it's true because what is his biggest weakness? Being fit. So when he's not fit, we've seen how Barcelona can't cope without
He's
Pedri.
been very good this year, actually, in terms of his fitness.
And this is exactly it, mate. You're right. I mean, I just had a quick look to see like what his record is this season, and because it has been something that's threatened to hamper him. Obviously, he's had a lot of muscle type issues, especially for a player of his age. It's a little bit concerning. In the 21-22 season, he missed 41 games. In the 22-23 season, he missed 19 games. Last season, he missed 25 games. This season, he's missed 3 games.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that is...
Look where Barcelona are.
That is significant. Significant. One of those games he just missed from having the flu. It's not even a concern. It's just bad luck. So, you know, those hamstring problems in particular that had plagued him for a couple of, like 3 years, 2 or 3 years, maybe they fixed it. I'm whispering on purpose. Maybe they fixed it.
I don't want to jinx it, but it looks good.
It looks good. So I can't think of any other flaws in Pedri apart from like the consistency of getting out the pitch regularly enough, season after season after season. And yeah, while he's doing that, pretty much the best. Is he More than Rafinha? Difficult to determine, to be honest.
I think if you offered Barcelona 100 million for Rafinha, they'd sell him for you. I don't think they would sell you Pedri for that.
Okay, that's a good analogy. I like it.
There you go. But by that metrics, I think they would sell you Lamine Yamal for you'd have to pay even more than you'd pay for Pedri. So who knows?
But I think no conversation.
I think the argument I think it's Pedri. I really do. A lot of these I've been like, I'm playing a little bit devil's advocate, but I think I actually am right on this one.
Yeah, you believe in yourself, mate. Believe yourself. Back yourself.
I often do, often to a fault, but alas, there we are. Should we come on to Dortmund?
Yeah, look, I'm picking a lot of forwards, so I might as well carry on doing it. Borussia Dortmund's main man is Serhou Guirassy. If they're going to get through, I was torn straight away. I mean, it's Adeyemi or Guirassy for me, and it's probably Guirassy. 12 Champions League games this season, 10 goals and 5 assists. That's not bad going, is it?
He took over from Rafinha. Took the top scorer mantle off him in the last round, but I mean, up to that point, it had been Guirassy all the way.
Yeah, he was missing with a knock at the weekend, so I'm assuming he's going to overcome that because he barely missed a minute for Dortmund in the league until he was left out for the game against Mainz. But yeah, he's just an exceptional goal scoring talent. The type of goals that he's scored, I've been crowing over him for years now, and I just love like his the way he adapts himself to different chances falling his way. I love it. And obviously Dortmund surprised everybody last year by getting to a Champions League final. If they're going to do that again, I just feel like it's probably all on his head in order of making those moments matter. They will get them across these two ties. Like, you do get opportunities against this Barcelona team. But yeah, they're not going to be too many of them.
I think it's going to be really interesting seeing this Dortmund attacking setup. Now, obviously, they switched formations in the win over Mainz. They played with 2 up top, with Adeyemi and Maxi Bayer up top. And I wonder what that looks like when Guirassy comes back into the fold, you know, if they stick with that. Because, you know, ultimately, we talk about this Barcelona high line, and it has been unbelievably effective. But if you've got Bayer, Guirassy, and Adeyemi running in behind, then that is danger to a high line because the speed on all 3 of them is really quite something. And I think that is something that Borussia Dortmund will look to try and activate here. Now, whether it works or not, you know, we saw earlier in the season that other teams have struggled to actually break that offside trap of getting behind. And, you know, you talk about Kylian Mbappe, you talk about Vinicius Jr. struggling with that. You know, these are players who you would put in probably a higher echelon than the 3 that Dortmund have. But you know, if it's not right, if it's not perfect, then there's a very, very dangerous game you're playing against that kind of speed. And, you know, Guirassy has been pretty much golden in front of goal this season. So I think you can make a fair argument. I just think that the problem with this is that Barcelona have given up some chances over the course of the season. They've just been able to outscore teams, right? So the question then becomes, well, can Borussia Dortmund keep them out at the other end? And my immediate hunch is no. Because they've not been particularly good at doing it to almost anyone. But if they are going to do it, I think quite a lot of it rests on the shoulders of Nico Schlotterbeck, who has been another one of the few bright lights in what has been a pretty poor Borussia Dortmund season. Looks like they are trying to sign him down to a new deal, and rightly so, because he has been very, very solid for this team pretty much since the day he arrived. I'm a big fan of Schlotterbeck. I don't know if you saw what happened at the weekend, but he took corners for the first time ever in the Bundesliga and got 2 assists immediately from taking corners. Now, you don't get many centre-backs taking corners and picking up assists, but it was quite something. Deliveries were absolutely exceptional. So fair play to him, because he's adding strings to his bow all of the time. But I do think that so much of this relies on the idea that, yes, potentially Borussia Dortmund can cause problems one way. My major concern for them is actually keeping goals out at the other end. And it's going to take something very special from Schlotterbeck, one of those monster performances, if Borussia Dortmund are going to be able to stop this Barcelona team, I think.
Yeah, fair play. Schlotterbeck, definitely an important figure in a team that can lose their heads as well. Like that's the other thing. Like when they become rattled, they're really rattled. So they need somebody to see them through those waves of play. Let's move on to the final game, mate. Because on Wednesday, alongside Barcelona versus Borussia Dortmund, is Paris Saint-Germain against Aston Villa. The very much favourites against the very much underdogs in this competition. So can Aston Villa continue to punch above their weight and get themselves into a Champions League semi-final? Hell of a task, but we shall see. One English team already tried in the knockout stages. It was Liverpool, and they failed. Obviously, Manchester City played against them as well in the group stages, and they failed too. So what does this come down to? Who has made an impact? Well, Ousmane Dembele has made an impact on both of those games, and I think it's very difficult to look past him, not just as an MVP for this fixture, but as an MVP perhaps across the entire season, no matter where you look at it from. He's got
for 2025 at the very least, right?
Yeah, for 20. Yeah, that's a fair point. Across the season, 30 goals and 6 assists from 38 matches. But yeah, as you say, like really clicked into gear just before and around Christmas time. And then has just been kind of relentless in everything that he has been leaving out there on the pitch. With Dembele, obviously, like at PSG, they were looking to come out of an era of Messi and Mbappe and Neymar, etc. And Dembele is kind of the guy. He's become their most dangerous attacking outlet. He's got the pace, he's got the trickery, and he's even starting to prove he's got the decision-making, which is probably the thing I held against him most. Like, does this guy have that in his locker? When he's in those key positions at key moments, does he shoot, pass at the right time to the right player? And quite often it was no. Not quite often, but sometimes it was no.
No, I think relatively often it was no, especially during that period at Barcelona, where it wasn't as bad, I think, as some people look back at it retrospectively, but it equally wasn't good. And the other thing was obviously the amount of time he was unavailable.
Yeah.
Well, both of those issues seem to have been solved.
Totally. So obviously makes a big impact in the last game against Liverpool. And what are you going to get from Aston Villa here? Like Emery is just going to have to make them very well organised, right, defensively, and they'll have a very stringent game plan that they'll look to pull off, and they've shown that they can do that.
But Villa didn't really press for the first half of the season. They've got a bit better at it, but they didn't really press. And I think if you don't press, then you're going to have to, someone's going to have to really try and break down a low block. But if you have Ousmane Dembele in there, then you have the potential to break down kind of anything, especially when you pair him with the players around him.
Yeah. And I think the thing that I like about him is the way that he can stretch a team. He'll do it by hugging a touchline at times so that you've got that width to worry about. Like he will just stand out there at times. But also he'll just go behind. And that's terrifying. Like the way that he will stretch your team is scary. And from a Villa perspective, obviously like you've got that midfield battle to win, which is going to be extremely difficult. But from a goal-scoring threat perspective, it's a lot of it's weighing on Dembele here.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to sit here and make a serious argument for two of my favourite players in world football, in Vitinha and João Neves, and I think you can make an argument for Vitinha in the kind of engine room. If we're having this discussion about Barcelona, where I think that Pedri is more influential and impactful, perhaps, than Rafinha is, despite Rafinha's output, you could probably make a similar argument for Vitinha and for Dembele. But I think it's slightly different just in terms of the way the two teams play. I think that the fluidity of this front three from a PSG perspective, you make that point there that he has that difference in his game, that he can switch with either winger. And Luis Enrique has given him the, space and freedom to do that, to go, all right, if you want to do that, just send Bradley into the middle, send Kavicha into the middle, and you can just sort of make it work between the three of you. That's important. That's crucial, because if you don't have that freedom, you end up with nobody in the middle. But that's not really been the case for this PSG team in 2025 in particular, but I think throughout most of this campaign for long periods, trying to make that work and change up the system. And I think that Dembele is the key to that, because his two-footedness, I think the fact that he sits there and he's able to go round on either side of either fullback, that's an incredibly unique thing in football. And, we've heard players talking about it and people talking about it before. Luis Enrique said that he thought Dembele had the potential to be the most impactful player in world football. And a lot of people laughed at him when he said that last season. But I think he's got a point in that if you have a team built around him that is also able to dovetail, that's also able to pick up different positions, he is almost impossible to mark because he does not stay in the same spot. He doesn't stay in the same position. He's such a fluid footballer that suddenly you're like, oh, I've had Bradley Barcola for 10 minutes and now I've got Ousmane Dembele, and you have to defend those players very, very differently. You've got Kvaratskhelia, who's incredibly difficult to stop when he cuts inside, but he's one of those players where it's, what he's going to do. It's just hard to stop him doing it. With Dembele, you have no idea what he's going to do, because often I think he doesn't. He just knows that he has the capability and the facilities to get past a player in a number of different ways, and he kind of plays it off the cuff in a way that very few players do. So I take Luis Enrique's point there, and whilst I would love to sit here and really, really drive home an argument for Vitinha being the metronome of that side, I think it is hard to look past Dembele.
Yeah. Now, on the other side of this, mate, I find it really difficult to gauge Aston Villa and their most valuable player, because I want to say, I think I'm going to say it's Ollie Watkins, but I'm struggling a little bit with evidence as to why, and that it's not actually Emi Martinez, the goalkeeper, who's got to stop Dembele. And Emi Martinez is such a big man for a big occasion, who can spark moments through goalkeeping, can spark a wave of belief and emotion throughout the rest of the team. Not many goalkeepers in my lifetime have actually been able to create
that kind of personality. I agree.
Yeah, because it's not just his ability, it's the personality bounce, it's the emotion with which he comes across with, the confrontations that he'll have.
The confidence as well, because he's like, well, this won me a World Cup, so it could probably win me anything.
Yeah, it was funny. And the other day, he was talking about the big save that he made in the World Cup final and how he basically became an insomniac for ages, imagining what would have happened if he hadn't made that save. Never mind the fact he did, he was still worried about what if I hadn't. And that's where he sets his stall out as what his job is, I guess. Ollie Watkins, I don't think his record in the Champions League kind of shows what his importance actually is to Villa. 10 games, 1 goal, 4 assists so far in the Champions League. His only goal and 2 of the assists came in a 4-2 win over Celtic in the group stages. But what we know about Watkins is that his movement, his finishing, and his ability to exploit spaces is so important. And when he does it well, he does it as well as anybody. I don't think this is one of his best seasons. It's not his best season. But he is such an important player. And PSG are definitely much better defensively than perhaps people expect. But they do at times have vulnerabilities that fly in the face of some of the flair that they can show. And the reason I say he's valuable is because he's going to have to be valuable and make the most of his chance that comes. He'll get a big chance, especially in this first leg. Like, it's hard to believe that Ollie Watkins does not get a golden chance in Paris to score. Will he take it? Will he take it?
It's the facilitation, though, for me, as much as anything. If you're going to make the argument for Ollie Watkins, it's the fact that he destabilizes teams, right? Like, because, again, he's another one of those players who can do a lot of different things. He can stretch in behind, he can link up and allow other players to get into those central areas. Yes, the assists and goals record isn't great in the Champions League, and I agree that this very much hasn't been his season. But he has moments. And if you can take those moments, take advantage of them, if you can open up those moments for everyone else, then that's the big key, I think, to a lot of this. For what it's worth, I think the answer is Emi Martinez. I think he is the man that they will look to in a moment like this to be the leader emotionally, but also to be the guy that's like, look, I've faced a lot of these guys. I know how to stop them. It's going to be okay. So I would say that the argument probably stands that it's Emi Martinez. But I would maybe make a case that one of the things that's been really impressive about Aston Villa in the course of the last couple of months and the way that they've kind of not turned things around, they were doing okay, but have kind of turned it on a little bit from their perspective. The influence of Marco Asensio coming on and making a difference off the bench. Now, he's obviously facing his old team here, but also you kind of look at it and think, okay, if Villa keep this tight, if Villa can hold off this PSG side, look at what they can bring off the bench. And if they can bring off Marco Asensio, a man who continually steps up from a substitution kind of perspective, who has the most goals as a substitute in the Champions League, teams are going to look at that and go, no, thank you. But I want nothing to do with Marco Asensio coming off the bench at this point in a game with things in the balance. And having that ace to play potentially is one of the things that Unai Emery has in his locker. Now, Villa are a bit like Inter in some ways, in that they feel like more than the sum of their parts. And so it's more difficult to pick a player. But I think the answer is Martinez. The alternate for me, I think, is actually Marco Asensio, because in Asensio, they have a super sub element that very few teams have, who they just can rely on to be a difference maker when things are tight. And so I would probably put his name forward, but I do think it's Emi Martinez.
Yeah. The more I think about it, I think I probably got it wrong, and it's Emi Martinez. Yeah.
We'll go with him. We'll go with him, but make up your own mind and let us know in the comments, etc. if we've completely missed something huge in that one. Right, that is all 8 teams done. We're going to take a quick break, and afterwards we're going to just rank 3, 2, 1 of the players that are going to make a difference in the rest of this Champions League. Stick with us. Hello, Rank Squad. When you think about businesses that are selling through the roof, like Allo or Allbirds or Aviator Nation, sure, you think about a great product, a cool brand and brilliant marketing, but an often overlooked secret is actually the businesses behind the businesses, making selling and for shoppers buying simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. Nobody does selling better than Shopify, who are home of the #1 checkout on the planet. And the not so secret with Shop Pay that boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning that way less carts going abandoned and way more sales going. So, if you're into growing your business, your commerce platform better be ready to sell wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling, on the web, in your store, in their feed, and everywhere in between. It's no secret, businesses that want to grow with Shopify. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout Allbirds uses. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/ranks, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/ranks to upgrade your selling today. That's shopify.com/ranks. Welcome back to the third and final part of Ranks FC, talking about Champions League MVPs. We've picked one for each of the 8 teams remaining. Dean, I'm going to ask you to give me a 3, 2, 1 of the players you think are going to make a difference at the back end of this tournament.
Yeah, so let's look at, like, if you're going to go and win this thing, who's going to be the actual MVP of this tournament? At 3, I'm going with Ousmane Dembele, because if PSG are going to go on and finally win this tournament, this is his year. All the reasons that we've just discussed. The fact that in terms of momentum and form, consistency, it's all there. And it's going to take so much to stop him. And you would imagine he is going to be playing beyond this round. So, yeah, 3, I've got Ousmane Dembele. 2, I've had more difficulty with 2 than I have 3 or 1, if I'm honest with you, as to where this falls. I'm going to go Vinny at 2. Because he has to do it. I feel like this is so...
I've been struggling with this too. So
I just feel like this 2 games are so important for Vinny. It's like half the world wants to see him fail, half the world wants to see him succeed. And it's like everything's kind of been falling the wrong way for him recently. Like people talking about his Brazil record, people talking about Real Madrid season, comparing him to Neymar, all this sorts of stuff. And none of it's really been in his favour. But it takes 1 to 2 games of football to turn that narrative on its head. And this man knows how to do that. All of the stuff that's been thrown his way through the past couple of seasons and more, like, he's, you know, whether it's not on the pitch, is hate coming off the pitch half the time with this man. And he usually does have the last laugh, but he usually comes out of it like with the moral high ground at least, right? And I like supporting Vinny. Like,
Me too.
I like him a lot, and I want him to be smiling again. Madrid, this is it. Yeah, I'm going Vinny at 2. I'm going Vinny at 2. And number 1 is Harry Kane. It's Harry Kane. I think this is such a big game for him over 2 legs. He's waited and waited for like opportunities in club football to go and do it. He's done it so consistently for Tottenham, but for a team that were never going to be that good, right? They were never favourites to win things. They got to Champions League final and all that, but never really fancied to win it at any point. And now he plays for a team with big expectations. And actually, this season, not much was thought of them. Actually, he wasn't even being spoken that much of coming into the season because of those expectations. But he's just so good at scoring goals. And when he does it, Bayern Munich are always in the game. So as long as that back line is relatively well shut, then he makes the difference and could end up with a Champions League title to his name. I think he's the most valuable player left in this tournament because he is the best at what he does. I really do feel like he's the best at what he does right now. He's the best goal scorer. For any of these teams, you put Harry Kane, he gets in every team and he makes every team better. That's why I'd kind of differentiate it at the end of the day. Every single one of those teams would take Harry Kane as their leading man.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a fair point. I've tried to work it down into who I think is going to be in the semi-finals, and I have come up with one of them is going to be PSG against Real Madrid, and the other I think is going to be Barcelona against Inter. So that's where I've got to with it. So Harry Kane is not going to be featuring in my top 3. But I do take your point about why you've put him there and how that works. I'd love to say it's Jan Sommer, but I think I'm going to have to let him go. So I think at 3, I'm going to put Vinicius Jr., not because I don't think he has the ability to make the difference, but because I think if he doesn't, someone else might well step up, right? Like that could come from elsewhere within this Real Madrid team. I would like him to be the difference maker, and I think he was the right choice. But I think there are more players that might be the ones that go, okay, they actually lifted their team through that quarterfinal, for example. So at 3, I'll go with Vinny Jr. At 2, I'm going to go with Ousmane Dembele. And at 1, I'm going to go with Pedri. Because I think if Barcelona win the Champions League, it is going to be so much to do with him.
Okay.
So that's where I would rank them right now. That's not in terms of who I think is going to win it, but I think it's who has the most kind of influence in terms of what this is. If Villa were to stop Dembele, or Real Madrid were to shut down Ousmane Dembele in a semi-final, I would expect a Desiree Doué or a Barcola or a Kvaratskhelia Kvaratskhelia to step up. And whilst I think that obviously Barcelona have players that are going to step up in terms of their attacking fulcrum, I don't think anyone is going to run a game like Pedri. And so therefore, I'm going to stick him in at number one.
Very good. That's fun.
That's going to be my full ranking. With that, let us know, as ever, who you think how your 3, 2, 1 in that situation are. And if we've just got completely the wrong player for any of those teams, then give us that shout as well. We'd love
and
to
if you've never reviewed this podcast, by the way, could you just quickly do that? We haven't asked for this. I've realised the other day, I was listening to another podcast, and the first thing they said was, could you rate and review us? It's like, I haven't asked for that for about 2 years on Ranks. Probably do that at some point. So I've left it until they're like
100. Yeah,
it's way too late.
20 minutes to go. I'm joking.
But yeah, if you nice people would like to do that, whatever platform you listen to, we would be very grateful.
Indeed, we would. And we are very grateful for you listening to this episode of Ranks FC. We do very much appreciate you, Rank Squad. Thank you very much to Mr. Dean Jones.
Cheers, mate.
I've been Jack Collins. This has been the ranking of MVPs in the Champions League, a week out from those games getting started in the quarterfinals. Lots to look forward to over the next few weeks as we roll into what they're calling the run-in of this season. Plenty to be decided yet. Thank you so much for tuning in. The Truth will be back on Friday. Doogie and Sam are going to be talking about sporting directors and in particular Arsenal's appointment of their new man, Andrea Berta, and talking about what he might well bring to the table for us from this summer. So make sure you're stuck around for that one. But from us and for now, thank you so much for listening. We'll see you all very shortly. Take it easy, Rank Squad. Peace. Hello, Rank Squad. When you think about businesses that are selling through the roof, like Allo or Allbirds or Aviator Nation, sure, you think about a great product, a cool brand and brilliant marketing, but an often overlooked secret is actually the businesses behind the businesses, making selling and for shoppers buying simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. Nobody does selling better than Shopify, who are home of the number one checkout on the planet. And the not so secret with Shop Pay that boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning that there are way less carts going abandoned and way more sales going. So, if you're into growing your business, your commerce platform better be ready to sell wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling, on the web, in your store, in their feed, and everywhere in between. It's no secret, businesses that want to grow with Shopify. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout Allbirds uses. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/ranks, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/ranks to upgrade your selling today. That's shopify.com/ranks.
Halliday presents, in the red corner, the undisputed, undefeated Weed Whacker Guy. Champion of hurling grass and pollen everywhere. And in the blue corner, the challenger, extra strength Halliday. Eye drops that work all day to prevent the release of histamines that cause itchy allergy eyes. And the winner by knockout is Halliday. Halliday, bring it on.